Welcome to Module 1, Micro Lecture 2, Researching, Writing, and Citing History. In some of the assignments for this class, you'll be asked to do research and to cite at least one unassigned scholarly source of your own choosing. Note that this is not an assigned scholarly source like your textbook, but this would be an additional unassigned scholarly choice that you find yourself and read and research and use in your assignment. Please use books, journal articles, etc. as available through your local library digital databases or the NKU Steely Library digital databases. Do not use websites unless listed at the end of the syllabus or pre-approved by the professor. Do not use encyclopedias such as Britannica, Funk and Wagnalls, Salem, Wikipedia, even if those are found on your local library or NKU Steely Library digital databases. So we want books and journal articles from official library digital databases. And official library digital databases are not the same as internet websites. Okay, so internet websites are not the same as digital library databases resources. Now I'm going to show you how to find your additional unassigned source. On the W. Frank Steely Library website of NKU, you will see down here something called Subject Guides. If you click that, you will find under Social Sciences, History American, Local, and World. You can click any of those for whatever subject topic that you're talking about in this class. You can choose then any of those. This is an example of what you would find under World History. You would find some of the databases that we're going to be suggesting for you, like Academic Search Complete and JSTOR. Another way to find those digital databases is to go to the home page of the Steely Library at NKU, and instead of hitting Subject Guides, clicking All Databases. If you do that, you'll see that this comes up. That is an alphabetical listing of all the databases. So if you were going to go to Project Muse, you'd hit P for Project Muse. You could also find things by subject, by type, etc. This is the easiest way to really go and find the sources you need. And so under the J databases, you would find JSTOR, which I highly recommend. It's an archive of journals that spans many disciplines, including history, and it provides high-resolution scanned images, which you can download of journal articles, etc., into PDFs and have available for your research and your writing. A similar research database for journals, for nearly 9,000 journals, in fact, is called Academic Search Complete. And one for over 100 scholarly journals coming from some of the major university presses in America is called, as we refer to, Project Muse. For upper level classes, or if you ever go to graduate school, etc., you may find ProQuest dissertations and thesis useful. That is for doctoral dissertations and master's theses that have been completed at American and world universities. And again, this would be probably more useful for those of you who are doing a longer paper, something not necessarily for this class. For this class, though, I would suggest these other databases, the New York Times Historical, the Newspaper Archive, etc. So once you find your research and you read it and you incorporate it into your assignment to give that evidence of the critical thinking that we're asking for, you'll need to cite your research. And so we're going to discuss, just first of all, probably some of you have cited research before in papers and assignments. Some of you have used footnotes, which appear at the bottom or foot of a page. Others of you have used endnotes that appear at the end of a paper. For this class, we'll be using in-text notes. So let me show you what in-text notes are. If you were doing something like this, that is, you highlighted this portion of a book and you said, I'm going to paraphrase the information here. Now, since the information here contains dates and statistics and data that, you know, the common Joe or Jean walking down the street would not know off the top of their head, you need to cite this in an in-text note. And that citation says to your reader and to me, your most important reader here for determining your grade, that you just didn't make this up, this information, that you got it from a reliable source. And to do an in-text note, you would use the last name of the author of that source, the year of publication of that source, a comma, then you skip a space, and then you put the page number you found it on, close it off in parentheses, and put a period. That's how you do it. It's a parenthetical phrase, sometimes called an in-text note. Now, the reason why you want to do that also is so that you don't commit plagiarism. So you want to properly cite your information, your evidence. Now, I want to define for you what plagiarism consists of. And please note that I will be checking every assignment for plagiarism. And if you commit plagiarism, you will receive an automatic 0 for the assignment. Examples of plagiarism include quoting or using wording from a book, journal, article, internet, or other source verbatim, word for word, without putting the quote in quotation marks and citing it in a note. Now you might say, well, why are you including the internet? Because even though I don't want you to use the internet, if you do use the internet and you use it to plagiarize, you're still going to get an automatic 0. I will be checking each and every assignment through a subscription to a service that NKU gets for its faculty called Turnitin. So, you know, literally it looks at millions of articles and student papers that have been done worldwide. Paraphrasing another person's unique ideas, themes, thesis, research without giving them credit in a note. We'll give you an example of this in a minute. Using another person's tables, graphs, photographs, artwork, or illustrations without giving them credit. Using all or part of another student's paper or presentation, even if that student approves. Using a paper or presentation from a free essay or presentation website or service. Buying a paper or presentation from an essay or presentation website or service, or paying someone to do that paper for you. All of those are plagiarism, examples of plagiarism, and would result in a 0 if you're caught. Word-for-word quotes must be put in quotation marks and cited and noted. So if we were going to take these first couple of sentences and quote them in our assignment, in our paper, we would need to put them in quotation marks, which means it would say, alert, reader, alert, professor, I am quoting something word for word from this source. And then you would need to put what the source is in an in-text note. If you would decide to use a very long word-for-word quote, then you need to use something called a block quotation. And that would look like this. So if we were going back to this original paragraph and we were wanting to kind of take the whole entire paragraph and use it in a word for word, that is a verbatim quote, then we would need to do this. So here, up here in double spacing, this is our own writing, okay? And then we're introducing the quote right here. Now you might say, why didn't you use quotation marks here? Because instead we've used what's called a block quotation. You use a block quotation when you're quoting a whole lot of stuff verbatim, word for word. And you put it single space and you indent it, you know, as much as you would indent a paragraph. This shows everybody that this is being quoted word for word, and look, you are properly citing it so that you're not going to get in trouble. The ellipses there, the dot, 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 is to signify that you've omitted part of the last sentence. And I just threw that in to show you. You're going to see ellipses in your readings, and you might want to use them in your own writing sometimes. Now, if you paraphrase things, paraphrase not generally known facts or statistics, that still requires a note, but it doesn't require quotation marks. Quotation marks are when you're quoting it word for word. So you see an example here of how we've paraphrased, that is, put in our own words these statistics. Again, you need to at least put a citation here, an in-text note that lets me know that you didn't make this up, that you got it from a reputable scholarly source. Now, you don't need to worry about a note for paraphrasing things that are generally known or widely disseminated information. If you said Christopher Columbus sailed to America in 1492, you could find that in millions of books, and you might even know it off the top of your head. Or Mother Teresa was known as a great humanitarian. You probably know that off the top of your head. Or President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963. La, la, la. All of these things, the United States entered World War II officially after the Japanese bombing. These are things you could find in millions and millions of sources and are common everyday information, at least for people who are generally well-educated, college-educated. If you would use a chart or an illustration or whatever in a paper, you would also need to put your source. Otherwise, it would be considered stealing. It would be plagiarism. Now, in addition to in-text notes, you'll be using a bibliography. A bibliography is a list of your sources used given at the end of the paper. It includes important information such as the author's first and last names, the title of the book or title of the article, the place of publication, the publisher, the date of publication, etc. In a bibliography in history, you indent the second line and thereafter. Note that you single space the citations and you double space between the citations. Now there are differences here. You might say, well, I have 3 articles by a person called Doe. How do I alphabetize that? Well, you would alphabetize it by going to the first name. And so Jane Doe's article would become before John Doe because J-A comes before O. Then you might say, but I've got 2 John Doe articles. How do I put that in alphabetical order? Then you go to the next thing, which is the title of the article. And M comes before T. So that's how you do that. McKay, M comes after D. P comes after M. This is an instance of an article where you don't know who the author was. Now, I give you examples of all of these kinds of citations. I would suggest that you print these out and use them. And also, I'm going to make some other suggestions here for you in a minute. You need to cite your bibliographies correctly as I show you in this micro lecture. If you do not cite them correctly and do not give all the parts in the correct order, I will take off points for that. Now notice I said 2 things. You have to have all the parts and they have to be all in the correct order. So this is how you would do a book. This is how you would do a book that has more than one author. Okay, take a look at that very carefully. By the second author's name, so here you're actually using the last name of the author, But if you've got multiple authors, then the second and subsequent authors, you use the first and then the last name. First and the last name, not like you start out with the first author, last and first name, first and last name. It's also important if they're editors that you note that with an EDS, if they're plural. If there's only one editor, you mark that with an ED, meaning editor. 7th edition, the edition of the book is important. Where the book was published, who the book was published by, the date the book was published, etc. For articles, for scholarly journals, you need to put the author's last name, the author's first name, the title of the article, the name of the journal, the volume number of the journal, the issue number of the journal if they give one, the month or season or year if they give one, and the page numbers where this entire article can be found. A popular magazine, similar. You need the last name of the author, the first name of the author, the name of the article, the name of the journal, the month and day if they give it as that, and the year, the pages that you found it on. If you don't have an author given, then you use something like this. Now, what I've just shown you is called Chicago style, also called Turabian style. It's what we use in history. It's what I expect you to use in this class, and I expect you to use all the essential parts in the correct order. A free program is available to assist you with correctly formatting your bibliographic references. This is a really cool site. I strongly suggest that you use it to help you out. The last thing I want to do is give you a few pointers in terms of your writing, because in college courses you don't want to be a bore. You want to vary your vocabulary. At this stage in your undergraduate career, you need to enlarge and vary your vocabulary. Repetitive word usage in the same sentence or a neighboring sentence makes for a very boring writer. Use the thesaurus feature of Microsoft Word to vary your writing. So a lot of students in their paper, they'll be referring to their research, and they'll be referring to the author, and they'll say, he says, she says, he says, she says, he says, she says. That sounds like, you know, something you would write in the 5th or 6th grade. Don't keep saying says. Instead, when you go, highlight the says, right-click it in your Word document, go to synonyms, and go to a wonderful feature called the thesaurus. And the thesaurus will enable you to find similar words, synonyms, literally. Synonym means similar words. So instead of saying he says, you could say he speaks, he utters, he articulates, he declares, he pronounces, he states, he cries, he verbalizes, he answers, he replies, he reveals, etc., etc. And then you can open each of these to reveal other things, and then you can click it and boom, get rid of says and put in something more interesting. This is one of the things I want you to pay attention to. The other thing is general grammar and general spelling. All of those are things that are very important for you as an undergraduate student to be aware of, so that you can be taken seriously as a student and get a good grade. Any questions, please feel free to email or phone me. I'm always happy to help, and have a good day.